this team has been exceptional in making sure that we are ready to go today, and I appreciate each and every one of you. So our agenda this morning, we will introduce our new employees. We will recognize excellence. We will talk a bit about kindness. We'll have an update on our strategic plan progress, and then we will have college updates. But first, our new employees.
Jackie Contreras, Instructional Specialist.
My name is Paul Embry. I'm a library aide in the Cuesta Library.
Hi, I'm Lily Bett, and I'm an Enrollment Success Specialist.
My name is Yuchen Lee. I do go by Maggie. My position will be the lab technician for chemistry.
I'm Phil Soto, Custodian 1, Night Crew.
Hi, I am Tim Stark. I am the gallery coordinator at the Harold J. Miosi Gallery.
Hey, my name is Ahmed Deif, and I teach Introduction to Engineering at Cuesta.
My name is Humberto Norman. I am a part-time lecturer in the Architectural Technology Department.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Pena, LVN faculty.
My name is Armando Perez, and I teach in the welding department.
My name is Toyon Prue, and I'm a welding instructor.
Trevor Rupert, part-time instructor, biology.
Hey, I'm Graham Yates, and I will be teaching culinary arts.
Hi, I am Katie Osman. I am the Director of Philanthropy for the Cuesta College Foundation.
So welcome to our new employees. We are so glad to have you at Cuesta College. Presented by Dr. Jason Curtis and Elizabeth Correa, our recognition begins this morning with honoring our first Jedi Academy completers. This outstanding group will forever stand as the inaugural Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Academy, led by presenters Dr. Lara Baxley, Dr. Rosemary Wren, Dr. Matthew Davis, and Katie Dittmer.
Thank you, Jill. We're going to read through the names of the Jedi participants. Good morning, everyone. First up, Guillermo Alvarez Pardo.
Good morning, everyone. Darby Axelrod.
Idona Cabrina.
Monica Contreras.
Gabriel Cuarenta Gallegos.
Elizabeth DeSwart.
Inga DeRoche.
Beth Ann Dumas.
Michelle Garner.
Michelle Gordon Johnson.
Kelly Gottlieb.
Colleen Harmon.
Laura Harris.
Marsha Harvey.
Patrick Len.
Brian Locker.
Amelia Marini.
Michelle Medhurst.
Sarah Miller.
Jeff Nadigal.
Eric Novitsky.
Brittany Ogden.
Alicia Paniagua.
Rachel Pass.
Virginia Roof.
Jen Sanders Moreno.
Melina Simons.
Nancy Steinmoss.
Thank you to all the Jedi participants and to the facilitators.
Thank you so much. The Elaine Holly Coates Service Excellence Award was established as an endowment account by the Cuesta College Foundation Board of Directors on May 9, 1994. In January 2014, it was named in honor of the first classified employee of Cuesta College, Elaine Holly Coates. Ms. Coates served from July 1964 to June 1992 and represents the epitome of service excellence. Nominees must demonstrate distinguished job performance and excellence in service beyond normal job expectations. This year's nomination comments include They demonstrate both a can-do and where can I help attitude. They jump in without hesitation to help not only their department, but the college as a whole. They have incredible skill at adapting and improving services for students, financial aid, counseling, and student services during the constant changes caused by COVID. They provide feedback and assistance on various projects, and their resourcefulness being critical to well-implemented projects. They assisted with cleared for testing and implementation and manned student information tables. Their tireless dedication to students and willingness to volunteer to help any department demonstrates professional excellence and professionalism. Despite the fears and stress caused by the pandemic, they were on campus every day working to ease the transition to fully online work for counselors and students, and proposed countless solutions that were put in place to help minimize the negative impacts of continual change and uncertainty. And finally, they volunteered to set up, break down, and staff the vaccine gift card table, all without hesitation, and even modifying their own schedule to meet the needs of our students. You may already have a pretty good idea of who this year's winner is. The Elaine Holly Coates Service Excellence Award goes to Adrian Smith. Congratulations, Adrian. We appreciate your excellent service on behalf of our students. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Matthew Davis, Professor of English and Chair of the Faculty Professional Development Committee, to present our next and new award.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Matthew Davis, Coordinator for Faculty Professional Development and Equity Education, and it's my great pleasure to present the first ever Adjunct Excellence in Teaching or Service Award. The Faculty Professional Development Committee created this award to recognize the outstanding contributions of our adjunct faculty in supporting student success, and in particular, to recognize those individuals who demonstrate an exceptional commitment to ongoing professional development. While this award is this award is titled in such a way to make it available to both teaching and service faculty, our very first recipient, who received 2 separate nominations, is a teacher who is deeply committed to serving Cuesta and our students beyond her work in the classroom. As a teacher, one of her students noted, quote, "She works with each and every student to ensure their educational needs are met. She saw my passion and strives to feed my ambitions with resources and opportunities to get more involved. She does this for every student, as I have seen firsthand," end quote. One nominator described her as a dedicated instructor who constantly goes above and beyond to serve her students, developing specialized programs for her CMC students based on their unique needs. As far as service goes, one nominator noted that this recipient, quote, "donates hundreds of hours to be involved in every need of the students, our department, and division," end quote. She has offered her time and expertise to students through ASCC-sponsored Zoom demos and volunteers her service to several college-wide committees. Her commitments to professional development are equally impressive, as she is a frequent and active participant in Flex and professional development activities across campus. Looking back at October Flex, I could see that this individual, in addition to leading one Flex session, attended 6 of the 9 sessions offered over the 2 days, which, as coordinator, I wasn't able to attend that many sessions. Additionally, she was a member of the Faculty Learning Committee through the BSOT grant, part of the inaugural cohort of the Jedi Academy, and has been an ongoing participant in the Equity Book Clubs. She is, again, according to one of her nominators, quote, "a team player who is immersed in the Cuesta family community, often preparing and serving food for the division in the multiple committees she serves on. She is always there for us for anything," end quote. It is with great pleasure that I present the Adjunct Excellent in Teaching or Service Award, can't see it because it's clear, to Elizabeth DeSwart, instructor in nutrition and culinary arts. Congratulations, Elizabeth. Cuesta is lucky to have you.
Thank you, Matthew, and congratulations, Elizabeth. I am pleased now to introduce Dr. Wes Sims, Professor of English and President of the Academic Senate Council, to present the final award.
Hi, first I'd like to recognize Michelle Craig for all her work throughout the process of selecting today's award winner. Thank you. 14 people collectively nominated this year's Diffley Award winner. Here are some of their descriptions of this year's winner. They are loving, loyal, and a champion for those who have less than perfect lives. And they do all this with a smile. They are an incredible mentor to our students as well as to their colleagues. They are smart, thoughtful, conscientious, and hardworking. They are a strong leader with great communication skills that include transparency and integrity. They have a genuine interest in promoting a healthy work environment for all. Recently, this year's award winner designed and implemented a program at Cuesta College. This program is designed to provide intentional and comprehensive transfer to support to students from groups who have been traditionally underrepresented in education, such as racially minoritized students, first-generation college students, students with disabilities, students from low-income households, foster youth, and undocumented students. Successfully, under their leadership, Cal Poly, who only accepts about 12% of transfer students, has accepted over the last 2 years 50% of Cuesta College students who have applied. The Diffley Award not only recognizes a faculty member who excels at their job, the Diffley Award celebrates a faculty member with strong community activism. Let me tell you a story. Several years ago, this year's award winner, who was already raising 2 sons, decided to take classes to become a foster parent. One evening after she had finished her training, she received a frantic phone call from social services telling her that a 5-year-old girl was in immediate need of a foster home, as the child's mother had relapsed back into addiction. With some nervousness due to the immediacy of the need, she agreed to take the child. Then shortly after, social services called again, asking her to take in the girl's younger brother, who also had some special needs due to the early trauma he experienced. She agreed to take both children into her home, and overnight, a family of 4 became a family of 6. What was initially intended to be a few months with 1 foster child turned into 1 year with 2 foster children. This story ends happily with the successful adoption of both children by a young couple. On behalf of the faculty, on behalf of the college, and on behalf of the community, I would like to congratulate this year's Peter and M.A. Diffley Award winner, Kate Porter.
Thank you, Wes, and congratulations, Kate. You know, it is just a wonderful opportunity at the start of each team that we are able to recognize excellence. And I just am so inspired by what we have just heard about each of these award winners today. So thank you. I want to talk about kindness. And as I think about it, it seems a little bit of a strange topic for opening day. But in September, I really started to spend a lot of time thinking about kindness, and it really began at the grocery store. If you think back to September, we weren't in a surge of disease at that point in time. And what I was starting to see at the grocery store was a lack of kindness among the shoppers with one another, interactions with the staff at the store. And it really started to be troubling to me because I felt like I was seeing a significant shift. And I was certain that it was going to be headed toward Cuesta. And at that time, I just thought, we really have to get out of masks. We're losing our humanity, right? We're forgetting to recognize one another as individuals because we're hiding behind masks. And I stopped seeing sparkles in people's eyes as they interacted with one another. And this really began to be a growing concern for me. And I talked with a number of people about it. And in November, as the executive team started talking about opening day, I first threw out kindness as something that I really wanted to bring to the fore. And what we just heard this morning in the nominator comments for Adrian and for Elizabeth and Kate really reflected the kindness that they demonstrate to our community and absolutely to our students. Then in early December, Dr. Al Solano, who is an education consultant, landed also on this idea of kindness. And he really related kindness to our equity, diversity, and inclusion work as institutions of higher education. And now, as we find ourselves ready to launch our spring term at this huge surge of the Omicron variant and all of the impacts that that has on our students, that it has on us, and it has on our community, I think that kindness is more important today than it has been before. Dr. Davis Jenkins really presents guided pathways as a kindness framework. On this slide, there's actually a link to the podcast, and we're going to make sure that these slides are posted in a way that if you desire, you can listen to these 5 education experts talk about kindness in our work in serving students. Dr. Jenkins says the first term learning experience for students can be soul crushing. We need to provide them with a light the fire course in their first semester. He goes on to say that the sad part is that students blame themselves for dropping out of college. Students are not succeeding, and it's not because of them. He considers guided pathways a kindness framework. Dr. Darla Cooper, who we all know from the 6 success factors, talks about the importance always of students being connected, valued, directed, focused, nurtured, and engaged. And she talks about these success factors as kindness. She says everyone at the college can and should play a role in student success, no matter what our job is. There's a difference between being a failure and failing. If comfortable, educators should consider sharing their failures with students. Students look at us as if none of us have had struggles to overcome. She goes on to share that in a discussion among disabled students, invisibly disabled students shared that they feel they have to prove they're differently abled, and that physically disabled students shared that they feel they can't hide from it. This interchange created empathy and support within the group, and we need to find ways to create these settings for disproportionately impacted students. The success factors are kindness. Dr. Frank Harris III presents a 10-point plan for addressing anti-Blackness on campus. He says equity-mindedness is really about how you approach your work. The responsibility you assume for addressing and eradicating disproportionate impact is thinking about the folks you are serving differently, whether those be students or other educators. As several of these higher education leaders do, he goes on to talk specifically about equity, not only among our students, but among our employees. And while our research has focused on the student experience, we also look at the experiences that different educators have. Educators who are from racially minoritized backgrounds, faculty, classified professionals, and executives. In some places, they're having a very different experience. They're experiencing racial battle fatigue. They experience racial microaggressions, have their experience and their credentials questioned and challenged because of their racial identity. We need to address anti-racism and anti-Blackness so our students can experience kindness. Lisa Ratchford, a colleague from Diablo Valley College, says that kindness toward new faculty includes onboarding them into equity work. She notes that it's important for us as faculty to be very familiar with all of the campus resources that are available to students and to embed them in our instruction. She also notes that we emphasize the importance of creating that sense of belonging, mattering, and inclusion in the classroom. And finally, Dr. Gina Garcia, who was part of our Flex Week in the fall, equates kindness to Latino students through servingness. And she states she doesn't like the term non-academic outcomes in the serving model anymore because she feels like all the things we do in the college are academic. For example, being involved in student organizations, that's an academic endeavor. Being part of the community is an academic endeavor. These are academic activities that lead to academic outcomes. Kindness and inclusivity are inextricably meshed. Kindness is equity work. Kindness makes a difference. And kindness matters. In today's world, it matters more than ever. We're now going to take a look at our kindness in action. As we look at our strategic plan, our progress report from the fall, and we're going to see the results of our diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism efforts as they are reflected in our strategic plan. But first, a little bit of context. All of this data has a giant asterisk. It's because of the pandemic. We know there is a significant impact to our data because of the pandemic. But nonetheless, it's important that we see how our efforts are impacting our outcomes. So I'm going to start by inviting Dr. Jason Curtis to talk about institutional goal 1.
Good morning again, everyone. We're going to work through, the VPs are going to work through some of the institutional goals from the strategic plan 2020 to 2023, and just starting with institutional goal 1, which focuses on access. So objective 1A talks about improving the proportion of our students who represent our low income and other populations through intentional program development. And so on the slide, you can see those groups whose enrollment has increased and gone above the target, and those whose enrollment has decreased. And I will point out that some of these, because they're pairs or dualities, when one increases, the other one has to decrease. So for instance, the fact that the proportion of female students has increased, non-binary considerations aside, must mean that the males proportion has decreased. And similarly for the racial and ethnic groups. In terms of Objective 1B, it looks at our enrollment for our community members who are age 55 and older. You can see the trend that it was increasing, although modestly, on the credit side up until the 1920 academic year, and then went down slightly in 2021. That decrease in 2021 mirrors the proportionate decrease that we have across all of our enrollment. You know, the pandemic has affected our enrollment 10 to 15% in each of the years of the pandemic. And so that is an appreciable decrease, but one that is pretty easy to explain. On the non-credit side, you can see a big drop in emeritus enrollment in non-credit courses. And in 2021, that really was attributable to the lack of available community sites to offer those courses. That was not a lack of interest. That was just a lack of our opportunity to access facilities where we could teach those classes. 1C talks about financial support and financial aid opportunities for our students. You can see that this has remained relatively stable throughout the past 5 years. The number of Pell Grant recipients has decreased in 2021. Again, that corresponds to the decrease from the enrollment drop. So as enrollment dropped, the number of Pell students obviously would have dropped also. And then scholarship availability for student scholarship dollars has remained relatively flat. It had a peak back in 1819, but otherwise fairly stable. And then Objective 1D talks about career pathways for our local high school students. The proportion of our students, high school graduates seeking an ADT has increased steadily over the last 5 years. You know, the difference between 1920 and 2021 is again fairly modest. The percent of local high school students in CCAP or dual enrollment courses was increasing, doing fairly well, and fell off in 2021. Again, the pandemic, and that drop is attributable to, we think, I attribute it most often to the fact that high schools were largely remote in 2021. And it was just a lot for a high school student to take on their regular remote high school classes and then add in remote dual enrollment on top of that. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Dr. Correa.
Thank you, Dr. Curtis. Good morning again, everyone. So I will be reviewing institutional goal number 2 for completion. So the objective 2A was for us to increase in the number of students who earn an associate degree or an associate degree for transfer, credentials, certificates, or a special job-oriented skill set. If we look at measure 2A, the percentage of students' persistence in the courses, overall, we did result in a negative 6%. If we look at from 16, 17 beginning years, we were pretty much staying pretty consistent, just up and down about 1%. And we saw the decline start happening again in 18-19. In 19-20, we went to 6-7%. And then in 2021, as we're seeing, majority of all of the data shows a decrease, but not too much. It was just a slight decrease overall in general. Our measure 2A2 is a percentage of students who earn either an AA, an AS, or an ADT. And as we see from 17-18, when we started tracking that in 15%, we started going up, right? Next year into a 19% and stayed steadily in 19-20 at 19%. We don't have figures yet for 2021, so hopefully, if we see what we've seen the trend that we've been experiencing for 2021, but we'll stay positive and hopefully it either stays the same rather than decrease. Measure 2A3, that's the percentage of students who complete a certificate. That we saw a really huge jump in our numbers from 17-18 when we first started at 3%, and then 5% in 18-19, and then we took a big jump in 19-20 to 12%. Again, we don't have our 2021 numbers yet, but looking at the trend, we hope that it still is going in an upward. But with 2021, of course, being the nominal year, we won't expect much. Percent of students who attain completion, as we saw again, we are starting 17-18 with 12%, and then it went to a slight increase in 13%, and then another increase in 19-20. So everything was showing steadfast that we were increasing at 25%. And 2020-21, we don't have data just yet for that. Our institutional goal 3 transfer. The increase of the annual numbers of students transferring to a CSU or UC, as we saw in measure 3.8.1 graph, that we have an increase of completion of ADTs. That was a huge increase of 33% as we started seeing in 16-17, where our numbers were steadily going up, and then we took a huge jump in 19-20 to 510. And as we heard from Academic Senate President Wes Sims on the work of Kate Porter, hoping that this is still that's a reflection of the work that has been underway with our transfer. 2021, we don't have information just yet. And the measure 18.1 also showed another increase of the numbers who transferred to CSU or UC. And pretty much it stayed pretty consistent, not too much of a change in the data there. Next, institutional goal number 4. Now we'll look at unit completion. Objective 4A was decreasing the average number of units accumulated by our Cuesta College students. Overall, we're seeing a decline of 7%, which is good, showing that the average number of units are reducing back from 16-17 of 83, and the most recent 19-20 at 77 units. So we are moving steadily, decreasing in the amount of units there. And then now I will turn it over to Dr. Curtis to review goal 5.
Yeah, so goal 5, a laudable goal and certainly central to our mission when we talk about our workforce outcomes for our students, particularly for our CTE students. The trick with this goal and the metrics around measuring it is that we're really at the mercy of obviously a large number of external factors, and the reporting has a pretty significant lag built into it, because we're talking about either the number of students in an entering cohort or the number in a graduating cohort, and then needing to wait for labor market data or labor employment data to come in. And so, for instance, looking at objective 5A, increasing the median annual earnings of our students, that has been largely flat. That's a pretty hard needle for us to move as a community college. There's not a lot we can do there on our own, other than try to offer more programs that lead to higher paying employment outcomes. And again, you see the lag there, that the most recent year is 18-19, because it takes a while for those graduates to report their income in the first year or 2 years after graduating. Same with objective 5B, increasing the proportion of students who attained a living wage. That's a living wage metric for our county. And you can see that that's also been pretty flat and has the same lag built into the data. And then finally, the proportion of the students who end up in a job closely related to their field of study. The data that we have is pretty old, 17-18 being the most recent year, and those 2 years don't show much of a change there between them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vice President Troy for the last 2 goals in the strategic plan.
Thank you, Dr. Curtis, and good morning, everyone. Wish we could see each other in person today, but it's nice to see so many people tuned in today for our opening day activities, and a pleasure to give you an update on what's going on in my area. So institutional goal 6 speaks to facilities and technology. And specifically 6A speaks to aligning facilities and technologies to our campus planning, so our educational facilities master plan and technology plans. So thanks to bond funds, Measure L, Title V, and federal relief support through the CARES Act, I think we've been able to accomplish a lot of these goals. As you've probably noticed, we have new laptops and devices all over campus, AV technology in the classrooms that help support hybrid and remote instruction, enhanced Wi-Fi capability all across the campus, and telecom projects happening and over time in every facility. We have backup generation now, thanks in part to our new data center. And we also have a new ECE building that's opened last year up in the North County. Big news on the facilities front, of course, coming up is that we're in the final design stages for a new campus center on the SLO campus. So our hope is that that design will be completed and we can send that off to the Division of the State Architect sometime in February. So that's a very, very exciting new facility coming our way. Next slide. Moving on to institutional objective 6B, which addresses the educational facilities needs of South County. We have renewed our contract with the Lucia Mar School District to rent classroom space in South County. So we'll be, after a brief hiatus due to the pandemic, we'll be back serving instructional needs there. We have, the board has learned of an opportunity for a donated site in a new development in South County as well. So there's certainly some interest in expanding our mission down into South County. And additionally, the Academic Senate has been tasked with considering programmatic options for our services down in South County. So there's still a lot of work and discussion to happen, I think, in terms of how we ultimately expand our services into South County. But there is a lot of activity going on as well. Okay, institutional goal 7, fiscal. 7A speaks to speaking a sustainable base of enrollment. And as Dr. Curtis talked about, why don't we flip to the next slide, please? We know that due to the pandemic, we've seen a downward trajectory in that enrollment, which is very discouraging to our efforts because we know that we had seen a lot of progress leading up to the pandemic. We'd actually restored a lot of enrollment that we had lost in previous years. So very disappointing to see what that's done. So I won't go into a lot of detail about this as I think we all know the story of what's happened. But I do want to assure you that the state has been put in emergency conditions allowances. So we're being funded as if we have our 2019 level of enrollment. So this is not directly, this downward trajectory in enrollment is not directly hurting our funding right now. And we have advocacy efforts with the state to see that they continue those emergency conditions into future years. So we're working with our state leadership groups on that. 7B speaks to, I think, prudent budget planning, making sure that we have adequate reserves and that we're looking for avenues outside of the state funding system to enhance our fiscal stability. So one of the things that Dr. Correa and I have worked on is expanding our international student recruiting. Obviously, during the pandemic, this has not been a great time to bring in new students, but we have been engaging in planning. Earlier this year, we met with representatives from the Santa Barbara City College International Program to get some advice and tips on building a strong program and a good marketing program as well to bring in more international students. And we also recently signed our first contract with an international recruiting firm. They're based in the UK, and they specialize in making European students aware of educational opportunities in the United States. So that's a good first step, I think, towards expanding our international enrollment. Another area where we might be able to receive additional funds outside the formula is through our surplus property. We do have 23 acres up in North County that we're working on to see if we can't find someone to lease that property. We have property right next to Education Drive that we recently contracted for a survey and an appraisal for, so information on that should be forthcoming. And we've also done an appraisal of the 75 acres we have in the Churro area across the street from the main campus. So we think that there's some leasing opportunities available with those properties. Moving on to 7C, this speaks to our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we're managing our resources wisely. We certainly know that community colleges are underfunded institutions. We're funded at roughly half the rate per student that CSU is, which we think is not fair, but nonetheless, we have to make do with what we have. So managing prudent reserves is certainly part of our fiduciary responsibility. At the 21-22 year, we ended the year with about over $14 million in unrestricted general fund reserves. That was about a $6 million increase over the prior year. And we know that there were unusual circumstances that led to that, an increase of that size. With the pandemic, there was a lot less spending on campus, a lot less travel, fewer supplies needed to be purchased with general fund, et cetera. So we're trying to make good use of that one-time savings by increasing our investment in a pension trust that we contract with PARS for. And by putting funds in that trust, we get much better investment returns than we do when we keep money at the Treasury. And we would hope that those returns could help pay down some of our ongoing pension costs. So doing that frees up general fund. So the Planning and Budget Committee has an initiative this year to consider an additional investment into the PARS fund. So taking good advantage of that one-time savings, trying to turn that one-time savings into ongoing support for our college. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Stearns.
Thank you so much. So we took a look at our strategic plan. We are roughly halfway through our 2020-23 strategic plan. And certainly the world looks different than it does when we develop this plan. But what I wanted to remind everyone is that in 2020, we aligned our objectives, our college goals, with the Chancellor's Office Vision for Success. And so our strategic plan is important. It's our internal measure of our work toward those system level goals that we are all the colleges are now being held accountable for. And so while we all have that giant asterisk of the pandemic and every institution is struggling with their data, with their outcomes at this particular time, in particular enrollment, it's important, I think, for all of us to have a shared understanding of where we are. And right now, Cuesta College really is holding fast during the pandemic. And it's also important to recognize that we are not alone as an institution. And when you compare Cuesta College to the national data, to the statewide data, in terms of our enrollment, we are actually doing better than the majority of our colleagues. It is very uncomfortable, though, to be in a situation where we really have very little control around those things that are typically absolutely our institutional responsibility. But what we are seeing is that all of the regular efforts that make a difference in enrollment really are not moving the needle, not locally, not statewide, not nationally around enrollment. And as we looked at that data and saw how our enrollment has consistently gone down over the course of the last 2 years, there is a lot of research being done around that right now. And the National Student Clearinghouse has recently identified that of the students who took a gap year, so those graduates from 2020 who said, I'm not going to start college in this pandemic, I'm going to wait a year and then attend, only 2% of those individuals have actually made their way to college. And so that's important for us to know and to start to explore, how do we reach that particular group who we expect to be here and is not. And so we'll continue to keep our eye on what's happening nationally, what's happening across California, and certainly we'll continue to be responsive at Cuesta College as we are doing our own enrollment planning and working to rebuild our base. Additionally, we have launched the Future of Cuesta Task Force that is really wrestling with some big questions. So many things have changed in the pandemic. So many of the things that we knew to be the case before, now there is uncertainty around. And so this task force is really going to be making recommendations around what groups need to be engaged in solution seeking in those areas. And I really look forward to what comes out of the Future of Cuesta Task Force later this spring. We're going to now have updates from our vice presidents, and we're going to kick off with instruction by Dr. Curtis.
Thank you, Dr. Stearns. So I've got 3 slides, and I'll try to work through them fairly quickly as far as my update here. And the first slide focuses on personnel and staffing in the Office of Instruction, or the instructional area. The second slide talks about our work on equitable outcomes. And the third slide talks a little bit about enrollment and new programs. So first, for the past 2 years, the Office of Instruction has been pretty significantly understaffed for a variety of reasons, retirements, resignations, and we're just now starting to get back to what I would consider to be a full or normal staffing level. And in the fall, we welcomed 2 new instructional specialists, Emily Hinkle and Jackie Contreras, to the office. And we've now, this semester, we'll be adding 3 new deans. One is a permanent dean. Dr. Oscar Ramos was approved by the Board of Trustees in January, earlier this month, and he will join the college on March 1st. And then we've also added 2 new interim deans. At the time the slides were made for opening day, we weren't sure what the names were going to be, but I can now confirm that the new interim deans in instruction are Susan Klein and Genevieve Siwabesi, Dr. Siwabesi. So welcome to those 2, and they will be starting with us from the beginning of the semester on Tuesday. We've also added a number of directors and associate directors, and I want to talk through those briefly. So we have a new director of institutional grants coming on. Her name is Lexi Bell. She also starts Tuesday. That's the position that many of you might associate with Janet Shepard, who left a year and a half ago. We also have 3 associate director positions that I've created to work on special projects and targeted initiatives. One of them is known. It's Christina Vastine, who's moved over from grants to become our associate director of CCAP and dual enrollment. We have 2 others, an associate director to help develop South County programs in conjunction with the Academic Senate Task Force that Dan mentioned earlier, and an associate director for programs out at the Varian Arabians Ranch site that is still a project under development. And those 2 individuals will be going to the February board meeting and starting the day after the February board. So we look forward to having them join the team. And if you're looking at this slide and thinking, wow, Jason, that looks like a lot of managers you're adding to the college. It is true, except I want to make sure everyone understands that the 3 associate directors are all being funded with external funds. There's no impact to the general fund of those positions. And that's part of a model that I've really been pushing towards, is to identify external funds, go after those, and use them to advance projects that are going to help the college move forward. So as far as our equitable outcomes, couple things to note, I think that have happened in the last semester or the past year. The first one I want to make sure and highlight is that towards the end of the fall, through our governance process, we approved our new ethnic studies program. We had already identified a way to deliver ethnic studies classes as cross-listed courses from other areas. But now we have approved that we will have ethnic studies as a program and begin development of standalone ethnic studies courses. And this is important because if you're not aware, there is a new general education requirement for the Cal State system that took effect with students entering college this past fall 21. They will need to take an ethnic studies class as part of their general education. And that CSU requirement falls to us to help deliver because it's been determined that that can be a lower division class. And so it can be part of a student's transfer as they move from Cuesta to the CSU system. And so we want to make sure that we have an appropriate range and number of ethnic studies courses available for students to take. And then simultaneously, toward the end of the summer, the Board of Governors for the California Community Colleges approved a new graduation requirement for local degrees, for all of our associate's degrees, that students would also need to take an ethnic studies class. So we're working on ramping up our ethnic studies offerings. And as part of that, Dr. Stearns approved that we would go out this spring for our first ever ethnic studies tenure track position. And so that work will be happening as we move through the semester. We're also working to hire an associate dean of student equity and special programs. For many of you, that's the position that you associate with Hui Dang, who left back in October. That dean will take over leadership of our student equity, but also will help with our implementation and ongoing work in guided pathways. Speaking of student equity, the 1922, so 2019 to 2022 Student Equity and Achievement Plan or Student Equity Plan is due to expire this spring. There is a process underway to write the next 3-year plan. Those plans will need to be approved by our Board of Trustees by November of this year and submitted to the Chancellor's office. And there is work already underway on those. I want to make sure you understand that Cuesta's 19 to 22, the plan that's ending right now, has been lauded pretty widely across the state. It's held up as an example of a plan that was very well written with achievable outcomes that we've actually moved toward and made progress on. And as such, we're part of a consortium of colleges who are working on how to write the best plans for the next round for the 22 to 25 plans. And then finally, we continue work on developing our guided pathways areas of study. Those have started to show up on the website and will start to show up in various outreach and other campus events as we move through the semester. So our Cougar Welcome Days and other events that happen toward the end of the spring should have a heavy focus and be organized around our areas of study. And at the same time, work continues along with student success and support programs to develop success teams that will support the students in each of the areas of study. And then finally, just don't want to keep harping on the enrollment situation, but it's obvious that our enrollment is down. I've spent a lot of time, and the deans and I have spent a lot of time looking at the enrollment data over the past 3-4 semesters. And I just have to say there are no clear patterns. And that's been frustrating for some people who want there to be a clear explanation, but the reality is it just isn't. Some of our divisions whose enrollment held relatively stable for the first couple semesters have suddenly dropped off this spring. Others that were low have in the last spring or in fall 21 have started to recover. Some haven't really dropped at all. And so it's kind of all over the place as we look at the different divisions and the enrollment in the different programs. I know there are people who would like to make the argument that it's because students aren't ready to come back face to face. That does not appear to be the case. There are people who would make the argument that it's because students are sick of being online and want to be back. There are also no data to really support that. So it really is all over the place. But we're looking at, because of the Omicron surge and the slow start to the spring semester, we're keeping our eyes open for opportunities to add late start courses after spring break. And we'll certainly be looking to take advantage of, hopefully, the opportunity to enroll more students perhaps this summer than we have had in past summers. We did approve another new program in the fall, and that's the Aviation Maintenance Technician program. That program is going to be developed or delivered out at the SLO Airport, the SLO County Airport, and that will start in fall of 22. So we're in the process of identifying faculty and getting lab space and teaching space set up down in the old airport terminal building down there. And that program has a ton of support from some of our local employers. And you should look for updates about that and exciting news coming out of that program as we move through the semester. We plan to get them on a couple of our billboards and other things to make sure that students know about that opportunity. Just wrapping up this week is another of our academies inspired by the success of the Jedi Academy that we highlighted earlier. We used some of our COVID relief money and created an online education initiative, Alignment Academy, which is a way for faculty teaching online to work on taking their courses and improving their courses and aligning them with the OEI rubrics so that our courses, when they're advertised on the California Virtual College website, it's a statewide website for community college online courses throughout the state. Our courses will have badges that will help move them up the list so they appear earlier in the list and be there to recruit more students. So that's a very exciting academy that we ran over the past 2 weeks. Much appreciation to Cynthia Wilshusen for helping to pull that together along with her co-facilitators. And 28 faculty signed up for that Alignment Academy on relatively short notice. And 26 of them have completed and are working to get badges for their courses. So that's very exciting. And then finally, just a note, we are also developing some new non-credit CTE programs. Mia Ruiz and her team taking the lead on that and looking at some programs in things like appliance repair and some Google certificates that have been made available to community colleges. And so we're gonna get those out there and make them available to folks in our community who might be looking for the next employment opportunity, but don't necessarily want to engage in a full credit certificate or associate's degree. And with that, I will pass it to Dr. Correa.
Thank you, Dr. Curtis. Hello again. So just some updates from Student Success and Support Programs. First off, I want to start off with congratulating Dr. Genevieve Siwabasi once again in her new interim role in the Office of Instructional. With that, you might be probably wondering who is going to be taking over some of those programs. So I will be filling in on assisting Dr. Siwabasi in her transition, and I will be overseeing a few of her programs in the interim, outreach and enrollment services, along with cafe and counseling area as well. She is going to continue to oversee the South County Center during her interim position as well. So just to start off with some expanded resources that we are offering our students this spring semester. We've started providing students with free meals in the fall semester, and we will continue to provide free meals to students here at the SLO campus. All they will need is to show their student ID card, and they will be presented with a hot meal between 11 to 1 and 4 to 6 in the evenings, Monday through Friday, except there's not, Friday will not have evening meal services. And at North County, students will be able to pick up gift cards, meal gift cards for the week for Monday through Thursday. We've also launched a partnership with RTA for bus rides, and students will be able to just show their student ID card, and they'll be able to get free RTA bus rides between Cuesta College at North County as well, this entire semester all the way through December 31st. For those students who purchase parking permits, we will also be offering gas gift cards for students in the amount of $300. They'll be able to pick up one gift card for the semester. There is some requirements. They'll have to be registered in minimum of 6 units. They'll have to have a schedule that's a hybrid schedule, some sort of form of online in-person classes as well. We've also are providing students with $350 worth of textbook book vouchers. We've opened up that application process early on in December, and we have had an overwhelming response. I believe 1,542 applications were submitted, and that was in the partnership with the bookstore. We are also going to be offering up to $2,400 worth of emergency grants to students. That application will be available to students beginning Tuesday. And we've also initiated student debt relief for students. So students that incurred any debt from beginning spring of 2020 all the way through summer of 2021. Those students were automatically contacted by us. We strategically ran reports to identify which of those students fit the criteria. And it was roughly about over 4,100 students whose debts were removed automatically from their accounts, and their student holds were also removed automatically. So those students could have an opportunity to register for the spring semester. We will also continue to offer in-person and virtual service beginning next week. And then some updates as far as some of our community partners that we're expanding our non-credit workforce programs, as Dr. Curtis mentioned, with the work of Mia Ruiz and the non-credit and continuing ed area. We've established a partnership with CapSlow to offer childcare provider courses that will be beginning in the fall of 22. We've also have a partnership with the Workforce Development Board to offer digital literacy courses. And those classes will be offered next week at both NCC and SCC in the evening time. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to VP Richardson with updates.
Good morning. First thing I want to call to your attention is the public service loan forgiveness. So yesterday afternoon, an email went out to all employee groups from Human Resources talking about resources available and information that is now on the Human Resources website about public service loan forgiveness. So if you haven't seen that yet, I would encourage you to go on there and see if you are eligible or maybe have some interest in that. So some upcoming projects in February of 22, we are going to launch our time and leave management. That will, we will send out more information on that, but it is going to streamline the time leave reporting and time requests. In summer of 22, we will be implementing the onboarding through NeoEd, formerly NeoGov. This will streamline the onboarding and offboarding processes. And again, more information will come about that. And then in December of 22, we will be moving to records digitization, which means all of our personnel records will be available through Banner, which is a project we've had kind of in our sights for years, but with the pandemic, it actually has pushed that project up. So lots of exciting paperless options coming to the college from Human Resources and payroll. And I look forward to sharing more information about those. I will turn it over to VP Troy.
Thank you, Melissa. So now I'll give you some updates from the admin services area. First off, I'll start out with the budget news. Last week, Governor Newsom introduced his initial proposed budget for the 2022-23 year. And we appear to be on an upswing in our annual roller coaster ride of the state budget. So Governor Newsom estimates that the COLA for next year will be 5.33%. So that would be the second year in a row that we have a COLA of over 5%, which sounds a lot better than the zeros we were getting last decade. Just keep in mind that that's just an initial estimate. That number won't be final until later in the spring, but we'll keep you up to date on that. He also proposes a revision to the SCFF hold harmless provision. Right now, the hold harmless goes through the 2024-25 year and was slated to end after that. What Governor Newsom proposes is to keep districts long-term at that 24-25 level. And then in any year where you need the hold harmless level, you would get that year's COLA. So it would not be cumulative. So for example, in the 26-27 year, you would only get the COLA for that year. You would not benefit from the COLA from the previous year. I don't know if that's a perfect fix to the formula, but at least there's some interest in the state from providing a floor going forward. So I think there'll be a lot of discussions about that. In the facilities area, of course, Measure L keeps our team busy there. As I mentioned earlier, we are deep into the final stages of the design for the new SLO campus center. So we're looking forward to sending that to the Division of the State Architect and getting going on that. We have a wayfinding project that will hopefully be completed this spring. If you drive around the perimeter of campuses, you'll see some green signs outside the park, some of the parking lots that are samples of that. We think that there's some modifications needed, but generally speaking, I think we're going to up our game quite a bit on the wayfinding situation. Also, air filtration. I think you know that we've already done bipolar ionization through all of our facilities across campus. We have air filters that have been distributed through in our common areas. And now we also have kind of smaller portable air filters that many of which have already been distributed throughout campus that are intended more for smaller spaces where there's a lot of in-person interaction. So if you haven't received one and you think your office space has the activity that warrants that, communicate that to your vice president, whoever your vice president is in your area. And then if that's deemed a reasonable proposal, we'll submit a work order and get that to you. Public safety, as you probably know, we've had a lot of departures over the last year, and because of the nature of the position, it takes a long time to hire a sworn officer. We have to make sure that they're very capable to do the job, and also there's a deep background check that goes into hiring any sworn officers, you might imagine. So it does take a long time to backfill those positions, but we're happy that we do have a new sergeant starting this term. His name is Rob Romero, and he has over 20 years of experience in higher ed police work. He worked most recently for UCSB. So we're very excited to welcome Sergeant Romero on board to our team. I hope you find time to say hello to him. Other news from public safety is that they will be moving to building 7500. So I know they're very excited about that because they'll be very close to the baseball field. And IT, laptops. Have I said laptops? If you have not gotten a new laptop over the past 6 months or year, put in your work order, get a laptop. If you haven't got one, IT is going through the process of seeing who needs one, and we'll roll that out to areas if you have an order requested. But if you need one, there's no reason to delay. Go ahead and put in a work order to get a laptop. That's our new standard going forward. Also this year in IT, a little later on this spring, we'll have our classroom AV pilot out. We were hoping to have that in January, but because of shipping delays, that's going to take a little bit more time. But hopefully a little later this spring, we'll have an AV pilot, and we'll get information out all to instruction for that, so you can take a look at that and give us your thoughts. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Stearns.
All right, thank you very much for those updates. So we do need to talk a little bit about COVID-19. Over the winter break, significant changes, updates to guidance were released by CDC, and now California Public Health Department and Cal OSHA have adjusted to those updated guidance. So Cuesta College has also updated, and as of last evening, What we previously had called the Safe Reopening Plan is now called Cuesta College COVID Protocol. And the document is noted with a date. So we will continue to provide revisions, and you'll know it's revised by a changed date. But in there, you will find all of the isolation and quarantine guidance changes that have been released. And it really reduces, and in some cases eliminates, quarantine. And it is all based upon whether or not, as an individual, you are fully vaccinated and boosted, or you are not vaccinated. So there are significant changes. It is pretty clearly spelled out in this document. However, we know that there are always questions, and they are very, very welcome. And human resources is the place for all employee questions to go if you have any around our COVID protocols, if you have any around what you should do if you are experiencing symptoms, what you should do if you test positive. And I have to say that in both of those cases, do not come to campus. If you are on campus and start to experience symptoms, exit. If you are on campus and receive a positive test result, you need to immediately leave. If you are symptomatic or you have a positive test, you cannot be on campus. So that is where we are all starting from. Everything else is explained in the COVID protocol. A significant change that I would draw your attention to, and it is spelled out in what is table 4 in this document, is it really now creates classifications of unvaccinated, a classification of vaccinated and not yet booster eligible, and vaccinated and boosted. And the significant change is for those individuals who are fully vaccinated and eligible to get a booster shot but do not have one, they now fall in the same category in terms of quarantine and isolation as individuals who are not vaccinated. And so it's more confusing than it was before. It is a little bit less straightforward, but we do have resources. Our human resources team is ready to assist if you have any questions, if you just need to talk through something. But I would ask everyone to be very, very mindful of please stay off campus if you are symptomatic or in case that you have a positive test result. And everything can be sorted out from that point. And an email will come out this afternoon with a link to the COVID-19 website where this protocol document now lives. And we are in the process. We're going to be updating the COVID-19 website really to be more of a FAQ list of questions and answers so that it is easy to navigate. So I just want to end today by turning us back toward kindness. And there are 3 quotes that I want to share here. And the first is from Scott Adams, who's actually a cartoonist. And I like this reminder that there's no such thing as a small act of kindness. Every act creates a ripple with no logical end. And this really applies to me. Last Friday, someone was really kind to me. And it was a very rare occasion. Neither Todd nor Cindy was on campus on Friday. And there was a group who had decided they were going to do a lunch run. And I was in a meeting. And so they sent me an email, asked me if I wanted lunch, but I was in a meeting. And this individual realized I hadn't responded and ordered lunch for me. And it was so unexpected. It was really appreciated. They recognized that I was in meetings and probably hadn't responded. It was a small act of kindness. There was really no logical end to how happy it made me and how valued I felt because someone went out of their way in thinking of me. Albert Schweitzer said that constant kindness can accomplish much. As the sun makes ice melt, kindness causes misunderstanding, mistrust, and hostility to evaporate. And I think it's that environment that has no misunderstanding, mistrust, and no hostility that we really seek to establish at Cuesta. That absolutely is representative of an inclusive environment and that will fully support student success. And Dr. Jill Biden says that education teaches us compassion and kindness and connection to others. So we have sent to all of you a reminder about kindness because together we keep Cuesta College kind. And so if you haven't already, you're going to receive in your interoffice mail. And for those of you who are fully remote, it's coming to you via the US mail, but a couple of buttons that are going to remind us to be kind. And I encourage you to share your buttons. Maybe give it to someone who you see demonstrating kindness in a significant way. Share with someone who is kind to you. Share with a student. Maybe share with someone who needs a reminder of the difference that kindness can make to one another. And if you need more buttons to share, just reach out and we are happy to provide you with more, because kindness is not just about treating others as we would like to be treated. It ultimately comes down to creating an environment in which our students can thrive and succeed. Thank you very much today for joining us here. I look forward to the opportunity when we can all be in person, but wish you all the best and a very healthy and kind spring 2022. Thank you all.